Imagine this. You are standing in a vast desert, the sun burning overhead, lips cracked with thirst. In the distance, you see water shimmering, inviting. You run toward it with everything you have. But the faster you run, the farther it seems to drift away. Exhausted, you finally stop. And in that stillness, you realize something unsettling. The oasis was never ahead of you. It was a reflection, dancing on the heat of your own striving. This is the paradox of happiness. The more we chase it, the more elusive it becomes. Modern life has trained us well in pursuit. Better careers, better bodies, better relationships, better versions of ourselves endlessly promised by the next purchase, the next achievement, the next moment just out of reach. We are told happiness is a destination, a prize awarded to those who optimize correctly. Yet quietly, relentlessly, the opposite unfolds. Anxiety rises, satisfaction shortens, joy flickers and vanishes before we can name it. Mindfulness enters this story not as a solution in the usual sense, but as a radical reversal. It does not say, try harder. It whispers, almost inconveniently, stop. This is deeply unsettling. To the modern mind, stop doing, stop fixing, stop improving. Yes, because mindfulness begins with a recognition that happiness is not missing. It is obscured. Like the sun hidden behind fast-moving clouds, it has not gone anywhere. The clouds are our habits of thought, our compulsive rehearsing of the past, our anxious sprinting into the future. Neuroscience now confirms what sages have long intuited. The brain is not a static object, but a living process. It rewires itself, constantly, shaped by what we attend to again and again. Where attention goes, neurons fire. Where neurons fire repeatedly, they wire together. This is not poetry, this is biology. But here is the deeper paradox. You cannot force the brain into happiness. You can only create the conditions where happiness naturally emerges. Mindfulness is not about manufacturing bliss. It is about seeing clearly, and clarity, surprisingly, is what softens suffering. When you sit and observe your breath, simple, ordinary, unremarkably, you are doing something revolutionary. You are interrupting the ancient reflex to escape the present moment. You are telling the nervous system, gently, this moment is safe enough to stay. At first, the mind rebels, it fidgets, it complains. It replays old arguments and imagines future catastrophes. Many people assume this means they are failing. In truth, this is the first success. You are finally seeing the mind as it is, not as you wish it to be. And seeing is the beginning of freedom. Think of the brain not as a machine with broken parts, but as a river. A living river, over years, even decades. Water follows familiar paths. Currents deepen. Certain channels become inevitable. Thought patterns worry. Self-criticism. Craving are like grooves worn into the riverbed. Not because you chose them consciously, but because life kept flowing that way. Mindfulness does not attempt to dam the river. It does not shout at the water for flowing. Instead, it introduces a subtle redirection, a pause, a widening, a new possibility. When attention rests on the present moment, on breath, sensation, sound, the brain's habitual loops begin to loosen. The default mode network, the system responsible for self-referential thinking and mental time travel, gradually quiets. This is the neurological signature of less rumination, less obsession with me and my story. But notice the elegance here. Nothing is being suppressed. Nothing is being attacked. You are not fighting thoughts. You are watching them pass, like leaves floating downstream. And paradoxically, this non-interference is what changes everything. Over time, new neural pathways begin to form. Pathways associated with emotional regulation strengthen. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, becomes less reactive. The prefrontal cortex, involved in wisdom and choice, becomes more engaged. Calm stops being an accident and starts becoming a trait. Yet mindfulness is not about becoming numb. Quite the opposite. Sensations sharpen. Colors brighten. Emotions feel fuller, not flatter. Happiness, in this context, is not constant pleasure. It is resilience. the capacity to experience life without being shattered by it. Consider how children laugh, not because life is perfect, but because they are fully inside the moment. Mindfulness does not make you childish, it makes you present again. The modern brain is overstimulated, but undernourished. It consumes information endlessly yet rarely. The just experience, mindfulness slows the intake. It allows life to land. And here's the quiet miracle. When the brain learns it does not need to brace against every moment, joy stops being dramatic. It becomes subtle, reliable, like gravity. You begin to notice space between stimulus and response. Someone speaks harshly, and instead of immediate defense, there is breath, a fraction of silence. In that silence, freedom lives. This is how happiness becomes lasting, not by intensity, but by stability. The river still flows, storms still come, but the banks grow stronger. The water learns new ways to move. Sooner or later, mindfulness brings you face to face with discomfort, not as an enemy, as a teacher. Fear rises, restlessness, old grief you thought you had buried successfully. The modern impulse is to distract, suppress, medicate, or explain these experiences away. Mindfulness asks something far more courageous. Stay. The brain's default survival program is avoidance. Pain signals danger, and danger demands escape. But much of our psychological suffering is not danger, it is memory echoing as threat, anticipation masquerading as reality. When awareness turns toward discomfort without resistance, something astonishing happens. The brain recalibrates. It learns that unpleasant sensations can be tolerated without catastrophe. This rewiring builds emotional confidence, not bravado, but trust. Trust in your capacity to feel. This is where lasting happiness quietly takes root, not in controlling life, but in meeting it. Control is exhausting. Presence is sustainable. Notice how much energy is spent trying to manage perception, trying to look successful, feel confident, appear composed. Mindfulness dissolves the need for this performance. You stop narrating yourself and start inhabiting yourself. And in that inhabiting, love changes too. You listen more deeply. You react less reflexively. You notice when fear is speaking instead of wisdom. Relationships soften not because others change, but because you are no longer negotiating with ghosts from the past. Time itself begins to shift. Moments feel longer, richer, not because clocks slow down, but because attention has stopped leaking into imagined futures. You are here, fully. This presence alters brain chemistry. Dopamine no longer spikes, only in anticipation. Serotonin stabilizes. Oxytocin, the chemistry of connection, flows more freely. Happiness stops being a reward and becomes a background condition. And yet, nothing extraordinary is required. Just breath, sensation, awareness returning again and again, like a bell calling you home. Mindfulness does not promise a life without pain. It offers something better, a life without unnecessary suffering. As awareness deepens, you may notice a strange tenderness toward existence itself, toward aging, toward impermanence, toward the fragile beauty of being alive at all. This is not escapism. This is awakening. Not loud, not dramatic, but profoundly real. And from this reality, happiness arises not as fireworks, but as warmth, a steady flame that does not demand the world be different in order to shine. When you are ready, say continue, and we will walk the remaining path together. There comes a moment in mindfulness practice that feels almost like betrayal, a quiet shock. You realize the one who has been trying so hard to manage life, the inner controller, the strategist, the relentless narrator, has never actually been in charge. It has been guessing, reacting, posturing as certainty. This is not a failure. It is a liberation. The illusion of control is deeply wired into the brain. Evolution taught us that prediction equals survival. If you can anticipate danger, you can avoid it. If you can control outcomes, you can relax. But the modern world is no longer a savanna, and the mind never received the update. So it predicts endlessly, it plans compulsively, it replays conversations, edits the past, scripts the future. The cost is subtle but immense. Tension without resolution, effort without arrival. Mindfulness reveals something radical. Peace does not come from controlling experience, but from changing our relationship to it. When you observe thoughts instead of believing them, their authority weakens. The brain learns that a thought is an event, not a command. This rewires the circuitry of identification. You are no longer the storm. You are the sky in which it appears. Notice how suffering intensifies when you argue with reality. When you say, "This should not be happening," the body tightens, the breath shortens. Mindfulness does not say reality is good. It says reality is already here. And paradoxically, acceptance creates movement. When resistance falls away, energy frees up. The nervous system exits chronic defense. The parasympathetic response activates. Healing begins not as an act of will, but as a return to balance. This is why mindfulness reduces anxiety and depression so effectively. Not by erasing negative emotions, but by removing the secondary suffering layered on top of them. Judgment, fear of fear, sadness about sadness. You stop asking, "How do I fix this?" You start asking, "Can I be with this?" That question rewires the brain more profoundly than any affirmation. As the inner controller softens, something else emerges. Trust. Trust in the intelligence of the body. Trust in the unfolding of experience. Trust that you can meet whatever rises without collapsing. This trust feels like happiness, but quieter, less excited, more durable. You begin to live without the constant bracing, without the background hum of what if. Life still moves, but you are no longer gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. You are responsive instead of reactive, and in that responsiveness, there is grace. Love, too, is transformed by presence, not love as attachment or possession, but love as attention, as the willingness to fully receive another being without filtering them through your fears and expectations. Mindfulness retrains the brain for this kind of intimacy. When you are present, you stop listening to reply. You listen to understand. The mirror neurons in the brain activate more fully. Empathy deepens. You feel others not as threats or resources, but as fellow travelers navigating the same impermanence. Time, in this space, loosens its grip. Moments stretch, ordinary interactions glow with meaning. A shared silence becomes as rich as conversation. A simple touch carries weight. Happiness here is not excitement, it is coherence. The feeling that nothing is being left out. Neuroscientifically, this is integration. Different regions of the brain communicating fluidly. Emotion and reason no longer at war. Body and mind aligned. This harmony feels like peace, because it is peace, and yet, mindfulness never demands perfection. You will still lose your temper. You will still forget. You will still get pulled into old patterns. But now, there is kindness in the noticing. Recovery is quicker. Shame dissolves faster. You begin to see that happiness is not the absence of struggle, but the absence of inner violence. Even fear changes shape. Instead of an enemy, it becomes a signal, a messenger asking for attention, not eradication. When fear is met with awareness, it often softens into curiosity, sometimes into compassion, and perhaps most surprisingly, joy rises from the smallest things. Light on a wall, breath moving effortlessly, the simple fact of being conscious at all. This joy does not spike and crash. It hums. The brain learns that contentment is not rare. It is available whenever attention returns home. This is the chemistry of presence, not intoxication, but nourishment. Eventually, mindfulness stops feeling like a practice and starts feeling like life itself. You walk, and you are walking. You eat, and you are eating. You speak, and you are speaking. No commentary required. This is not withdrawal from the world. It is intimacy with it. Every moment becomes worthy of attention, not because it is extraordinary, but because it is here. Happiness, in this final understanding, is no longer something you measure. It is something you inhabit. It is the ease of not pretending, the relief of not resisting, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can meet life as it is. Aging becomes less frightening when you are not racing time. Loss becomes bearable when you are not denying love. Even death, contemplated gently, loses some of its terror. When you have learned how to be present with endings, mindfulness rewires the brain. Yes, but more deeply, it rewires identity. You stop being a problem to solve and start being a process to experience. And in this experiencing, gratitude emerges. Naturally, not forced, not performed, just felt. A soft acknowledgement of the miracle of awareness itself. The sages spoke of this in different languages: liberation, awakening, homecoming. Modern neuroscience gives us scans and studies, but the truth they point to is ancient and simple. Happiness is not found by leaving the present moment, it is revealed by entering it fully. So let the breath arrive, let the mind wander and return. Let life unfold without your constant interference. There's nothing to add, nothing to fix, nothing to become, only this, only now, and in this now, a happiness that does not fade, because it was never borrowed from the future in the first place.